Very good. All right. I know what to hear. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. We are beginning this day, this new week. Just had my birthday on Shabbos, and I don't really feel any different, but I guess I am. We have our pointer. That's right, pointer. Yes. Right, this week's Torah portion is talking about, it begins with Abraham buying a grave for his wife. Buying a grave for his wife. Sorah passes, and strangely it's called Chaye Sorah, the life of Sorah, when it's actually talking about after she died. But that's one question that we're not going to deal with today. And here we're dealing with another thing. She was buried in a place that was called the Cave of Machpelah, and it was found in the field of Machpelah. Now, the word Machpelah means to be doubled. Kefel means to be doubled. And the minimum of double means two. So kefel means a double, a repetition. And they say because it was like a cave on top of a cave, or a cave within a cave. In any case, that's where he buried Sorah, and that's where they're buried today. And incidentally, it's called, the place where they're buried, the city where they're buried, is in Hebron. It's also called Kiryat Arba. Kiryat Arba. And the reason it's called Kiryat Arba is because there are four couples that are buried there. There is Abraham and Sorah, Isaac, Yitzchak, and Rivka, husband and wife, both cases, and Yaakov and Leah, even though the Yaakov had two wives, but Leah's buried in Beit Lechem. And he's buried there. And also, so that's only three couples. What about the fourth? Adam. Adam and his wife are buried there. Okay, what's the connection between specifically Adam and specifically Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? I mean, he's the father of all mankind. So we'll talk about that also in another time. But suffice it to say that Adam was created. He was a true man. His whole creation was in order to serve God every moment. That's the purpose of man in general. And how everyone's personality is different, but the goal is the same, to serve the Creator. And the first one that really got the point after Adam ate from the tree, waited 2,000 years, was Abraham and his wife. So they're buried in this place called Marat HaMachpelah. The whole idea of serving God means to make God more revealed in this world. To make God more revealed. And then the world becomes more healthy and more meaningful and more pleasant and more happy. And you feel happy just to do what God wants. Okay, so that's the idea of the Jewish people, is to reveal God in the world. And that's what this is talking about, revealing God. How do we reveal God in the world? Okay, it's a little bit of a difficult subject to talk about, because those people who do reveal God, it's hidden to us, because God is reality. And we think that we're already in reality. This is real. But the fact is that it's just a little wisp of reality. We've talked about this before, of what real reality is. And you get little sort of shots of reality in things like genius, right? You hear beautiful music or something like that. Whoa, this is really, takes me out of the world. Or conscience, your conscience tells you what really to do. And then there's also sub-reality, going to sleep, taking drugs, things like that. You get sub-reality. It's not really reality. It's a twisted sort of reality, not real reality. So seeing what real reality is means that you feel that you're being created, and you feel that you're being created for a purpose. And people would feel this like in the Holy Temple. They would feel a little bit, that's why we want the Holy Temple to come back. But that's what Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob brought into this world. So this is talking about the idea of revealing God. Okay, so God has a lot of names. God has a lot of names. One revelation of God is the whole creation. That's King David is praising God for creating the heavens and the earth and the stars and the plants and the trees and the animals, and they're all praising God. And you can see the miracle in every the detail of creation. You can see the harmony and the beauty and the symmetry and the complexity, etc., etc. And so that's a small hint that there is more to reality than meets the eye. Okay, so the main name of God is the 4 letters, which are called Yud and then Hey and then Vav Hey. There's also other names. There's the name Elohim. Usually they don't say Elohim, they say Elokim. And the name El and the name Shaddai. And there's all these different names are different aspects of God. But the main essence name of God is the letter Yud and then Hey Vav Hey. And we don't pronounce it that way. We pronounce it Adonai. And the reason is we don't write the name down also because it's referring to a reality that's so real and that's so, how do you say, essential to our being, and that we're not privy to it, that we should not consider this name to be like any other name. It's not referring to anything else that we know. Names refer to things, right? The name of God is not referring to anything. It's creating the creator of all things, even spiritual things. That's why we don't use it, but we want this to be revealed. Okay, so here we go. This is talking about Marat Machpelah doubled. What's going to be doubled? So we see one thing, that in God's name, there are 2 letters of Hey. Yud and then Hey and then Vav and then Hey. And there's what's called in Hebrew the filling, milui. So it comes out that each one of these letters of God's name is more real than the world is. It's not just like letters in a book. The world comes from these letters. Reality comes from these letters of God. God created the world from his speech. We see in the Bible, God spoke and created the world. You can speak, you can't create anything. You can't create anything. You can change things. You can order people to do things, and etc. In fact, there's no such thing as creation in this world. You can take one thing and make it into another thing, but you can't there's no such idea of nothing. You can't conceive what that means. Okay, so the letters of God's name are more real than this world. Those are units of creation, creative force. The name of God. In some ways, it's more real than even the letters of the Torah. The letters of the Torah, they come from God, and God is represented by this name of God. Okay, so you can take each letter has tremendous importance. In some ways, each letter has infinite more importance than this whole entire universe does, spiritual, physical, because it's the creative force that creates all the angels and everything. Okay, so the Kabbalists, the people who are into Kabbalah, they're really into this. They're really into this, the forces of creating the world. They say that in the Talmud, it says that Rabbah created a human being using these letters of God's name. He knew how to use the letters of God's name. And afterwards, there was the Maharal of Prague, the Rabbi Yehuda Levi, and he created a human being. He didn't really create a human being. He took dirt and everything like that, and he somehow or other drew a soul into him through these letters. Okay, how will you do that? I don't know, but he did it. Okay, so these letters of God's name can be filled up. Filled up. What does it mean, filled up? For instance, the first letter of God's name is Yud. So the letter Yud has a numerical value of 10. 10. Right? That's the Hebrew alphabet, is also numbers. The Hebrew alphabet. So the letter Yud is 10. But if you pronounce it, it's pronounced Yud, Yud Vav Daled. Yud Vav Daled. Yud Vav Daled, then the numerical value is 20. Yud. And the same thing, letter Hey. The letter Hey also could be filled up. You can't pronounce any of the letters unless they have something filling them. You have the Yud just with alone goes, what is it? Hey. So in order to have a Hey, so that has to be filled up. So there's different ways of filling the letter Hey, but one of them is to fill it with another Hey. So Hey. You can fill it also Hey Aleph and Hey Yud. that's a different numerical value if you do that. And then from that comes these different names, which we learned about in the past. The name Ma and the name Ban. Ma is 45 and Ban is 52. And these are explained in the Chassidut, what these different aspects of God are. Okay, suffice it to say that number one, I don't really know what I'm talking about. I mean, this is the revelations of God. I don't know what it means, these revelations of God. Maybe, who knows? In the time of the temple, people would have more, how do you say, this would be more meaningful. Because when you went to the temple, you felt something different than when you came back. It wasn't a spiritual feeling. It was much, much above that. Much above that. Okay, so but suffice it to say that God's presence wants to be revealed in this world. When God gave the Torah, when he took the Jews out of Egypt, he revealed himself in a different way, but he revealed himself then, especially when he gave the Torah. The revelation of God is tied up with the Torah also, because when God is revealed, then you feel responsibility in this world. God wants this world. Revelation of God is not spiritual. That's like all these Eastern religions. They talk about levels of spirituality and levels of awareness and levels of consciousness and everything. That's very nice, but that's not what Judaism talks about. Those levels are okay, but that's not God. Those are aspects of the creation, the spiritual half of the creation. Okay, here we're talking about the creative force. Okay, let's go. So we spent too much time, I think, in the introduction. Here we go. So we have the letter Hey, and then we have the Milui Hey. We have Hey and then Hey. Now, these are creative forces of God, right? So the letter Hey, this is the last Hey of God's name. The last Hey of God's name is written Hey, Yud, and then Hey, and then Rav, Hey, last Hey of God's name. But to fill it up, like I said before, the inside of it is also the letter Hey. The Yibachin is Kefila. That's what we're talking about, this level of doubled. Kanoda, like it's known from the idea of Marat Amachpelah. Marat, the cave of Machpelah that was doubled. That's what it's called, the place where Abraham is buried. Abraham buried Sarah, and afterwards he was buried there. It's called Marat Amachpelah, the cave which is doubled. This refers to a spiritual level, the Hey Acharona, the last Hey of God's name. And that's the name Ban. The name Ban is filled up with Hays. The Hays are filled with Ban. The name Ma, the Hays are filled with Aleph. And the name Ban, which is 52, is filled up with, and that's the name Ban is the lowest of the names. These four gematrias of God's name, of Sag and Ab and Ma and Ban. Ban is the lowest. Okay, so like I said before, the whole point of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob is to make God revealed in this world. And even in the place where they were buried, this signifies that. That, to make God revealed in the world. Now, in Judaism, there really isn't, truly, there's not death. There's not really death. Death. There's just different forms of life. The soul is always alive. Death is going against the Torah. That's death. All those deeds and speech and thought which are against the Torah, they die. They don't last. But the soul, for instance, lasts on. So that they were put into this place called the place what's doubled, it still is a holy place. It still is holy. Holy means to reveal God in the world. That's what holiness means. Okay, so they were buried. Abraham buried Sarah. How did Abraham know where to bury Sarah? Because that's where Adam and his wife were buried. Adam and Eve, Adam and Chava. They were buried there. And he knew it. He sensed it. And so he knew that he had to bury Sarah there and that he was going to be buried there and etc. Right? But they weren't buried because they were dead, so to speak. They were buried because it was another stage of life that they were in. And this represents the two Hays, the last Hay of God's name. The last Hay of God's name. And that's filled up with another Hay in order to pronounce it. And that makes the numerical value of 52. But you don't have to go into it now, but suffice it to say that Yud and then Hey and then Vav and then Hey is 26. 26. And if you fill up the Yud, that adds another 10. And if you fill up the Hays, then let's say the first Hay of the God's name and the last Hay, that adds another 10. So already you've got 46. 46. And then you fill up the letter Vav, and etc. It comes out to Vav. It said if you fill up the Vav with 2 Vavs, so it comes out to 46. With another, it comes out to Ban, 52. The Indian is understood like this. What's so important about this? What is important about this? The Rebbe is trying to tell us that the most important thing is to reveal God in the world. That's why man was created, to reveal more God in the world. And that's what Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they did. And that's why they were buried in this place called Marat HaMachpelah, to reveal God in the world. And that's hinted at the last hay of God's name and how it's filled up with another hay. Okay, so now what we get in the world is let's see. We get only the outside of this hay. We don't get the filling. We don't get what's inside. So there's a world. The world is real. And you can get little hints of what God is from the world. But their idea is to reveal the inner hay of the last letter of God's name. The last letter of God's name, that's hay, represents the 5 organs of speech. That's what it means when God speaks. That comes from the last hay of his name. But inside of this is hidden another hay. We said that's the double. And that's indicated at the place where they're buried. That's permanent. That's where they are until the raising of the dead. But they're still helping us. So this is one of the helps that we get to learn what it means, this doubled, that inside of this world, there's deeper meaning, deeper reality that we have to reveal. Okay, let's go. First of all, let's understand eating. What's eating got to do with it? We'll see. Okay, now eating is a very interesting thing because when you eat, you take out what's inside of the food. You have food and you eat the food. Why do you eat the food? Not just to fill up your stomach. Strangely, when you eat food, you feel enlivened, right? Well, you feel energized by the food. So there's something inside of the food that you eat. The same thing in the world. There's something inside of the world that's nourishing, that's more alive than the world is. So let's see. The main reason that we eat, because from the food, there is made fat and blood. And in blood there is the soul. Is the soul v'chayut adam, in the life of man, shemakabel hakaved, that the liver kaved adam, that the blood goes into the liver and it's united with the food. Right? There's the whole digestive system and it sends whatever it is, the nutrients and minerals and vitamins, things like that. And the liver renews the blood. And then it sends it to the heart, and then it goes to the brain. And it all because of food. The Talat Shlitin, there are 3 rulers in man. There's the liver, kavda, liba, v'mocha. The liver, the heart, and the brain. Each one is essential to life. By means of this, mitala Michael, the food becomes elevated. Shenasa mimeno, that comes from the food. First of all, you had a carrot. You ate the carrot. The carrot is a vegetable, and you eat the carrot, and from the carrot becomes blood in the liver, and that goes to your heart. That gives you emotions and life, tomoach, and brains, intellect. By means of this, a person's brain becomes stronger. His heart and his brain become stronger to serve God. Shebalibo, that in his heart there can be slavus karush ve'esh, a flaming fire for God. Shenasa b'koach achila, that comes from the power of eating. Shebalo achila, that if a person doesn't eat, haya mitchalesh, a person becomes weak. You don't eat for a long enough time, you become weak. Begam also mocho nasa chazak, your brain becomes stronger. Lidbon and begadlus Hashem, you can serve God, you can think. But if you don't eat, you're always on the verge of like unconsciousness. You always want to go to sleep. You haven't got any power. Okay, different people react in different ways, but eventually a person doesn't eat, he dies. B'zeu, that's the whole idea of birur shemin. That's the idea of refining. Shemina Michael, that from food, nasa adam, becomes a human being. Okay, you can probably ask a question. The question is asked very often in Hasidut. Oh, 1 second. I forgot. Let's give charity. Wow, we always give charity in the beginning of the class, or at least I decided I wanted to. And let's not let this day be an exception. Giving charity, let us give from what we have to others. Contribute to the world. Don't be stingy. Give love. Give a good word. Give a good thought. Give a good deed. Help others, and especially if you give money to others, people that need it, helps them to buy food. That's what we're talking about. A person that's poor, he doesn't have what to eat. Because, yes. Think about the greatness of that. But all this is in the weekdays. Shabbat, ben Shabbat, birur asur. Okay, now the Rebbe is going to tell us something very, very amazing. And that is, the Jewish people have a commandment to keep Shabbat. Non-Jews are not allowed to keep Shabbat. Non-Jews are technically not supposed to even make a day of rest. There's different opinions, because non-Jews are here to fix up the world. That's the purpose of the non-Jews, to make the world a vessel for the blessing that the Jewish people are supposed to bring in to the world. Okay, so six days of the week, the Jewish people are something like the Gentiles. They work in the world. Their idea is, the purpose is to be in the world, to work in the world, to fix up the physical world. To fix up the physical world. Okay, there's a bit of a difference. Because the main thing of the Jews is always to bring blessing into the world. And the main thing of the non-Jews is to make the world fitting for that blessing. The world should be the Shevet Yetzaro. The world should be an orderly place, a meaningful place. If you want to call it even a blessed place. The Jews, their job is to make the world a holy place. Okay, so the main holiness of the Jews, that comes from Shabbat. Shabbat is a holy day. And the 6 days of the week are regular days. Therefore, we bring blessing into the world in a different way. In the weekdays, it's by means of work. But on Shabbat, we connect to the blessing itself. You don't have to do any work, so to speak. On Shabbat, work is forbidden. Because Shabbat is the day the Jews are supposed to just bring blessing into the world in a pure way, not through work. In the weekdays, they do it through work, so it becomes sort of mundane. Okay, that's what the Rebbe says. Eating food. Now, we eat food every day of the week, says the Rebbe, but a person that's really in tune with this will understand that the eating that is done in the weekdays is different than the eating that is done on Shabbat. The result is different. The purpose is different. The goal is different. On the weekdays, we're eating in order to refine the food, purify the food. But Shabbat, but on Shabbos, borer usur, it's forbidden to refine and purify. El ha'achila, eating is yoter elyon, it's higher. The bechinas hamshachet draws down godliness milamayla from above. Like it says, v'karata l'Shabbat only. You call to the Shabbos pleasure. As titanega l'Shem, you get pleasure from God. Pleasure. Now, what is pleasure? Pleasure is usually the result of doing something, the result of will. You want to do something. When you achieve that goal, you get pleasure. So to speak, the 6 days of the week, that's will. That's willpower. We want to serve. We're doing, we move, we create. That's the 6 days of the week. Shabbat is a day of pleasure. What does it mean? Everything is accomplished. It says, Kol melechtacha asuya. It's supposed to be on Shabbat. You treat the Shabbat as though you haven't got any more to do. You finished. That's why you don't do work on Shabbat. It is written, of course, there's exceptions. If somebody's life is in danger, then you're allowed to work. You must work, not you're allowed to. It's a commandment. to drive and to call on the phone and to help the person, whatever person's life. But except for that, there is no Shabbat is is holy. You don't do anything to it. It's like a pure, perfect diamond. You just clean it a little bit. You don't have to don't touch it, don't scratch it, don't. It says Achar v'kerem tzartani. Now this is only for the Jewish people here. This is for the Jewish people, but the Jewish people are for the world. The Jewish people are for the world. The Jewish people are public servants. Like a mayor of a town or a governor or something, they're supposed to be the biggest servants of all. They have more, in some ways, they're above all the people, but they're above in the sense that they have to bring them blessing, they have to bring them order. In the world. So the Jewish people are public servants. Here's telling us how to serve the public, how that we Jewish people have to keep Shabbat. What's Shabbat? Shabbat is the day of getting pleasure from God, bringing God into the world. It says, it says that God, it's a sentence in Psalms, you created me last and first. This is King David said, he's quoting Adam, the first man. You created me last and first. Man, first man, was the last thing to be created when God created the world. And man was created right at the end of the sixth day. Right, like 3 hours before the sunset, God created man. Shamichael, the last thing. And of course, man was the first thing that rose up in God's mind. So that means he was the first. Shamichael, that food as it is below in this world, when it came down, what's called the breaking of the vessels, when God did this, one of the steps of creation was a sudden breakage that God made in order that there should be another aspect of separation. God wanted to make a separate world. So one of the things was called the breaking of the vessels, where God put a lot of light into a very thin vessels. That's called the world of Tohu. We talked about this before, and I don't want to really go into it in great length, but there was one step of the creation which is called the breaking of the vessels, and that caused a big breakage, so to speak, a sudden descent of reality into this world. So this became a very low type of reality. From this breaking of the vessels, that's where all evil comes from and where all the mistakes come from. So that's the breaking of the vessels. And our job is to elevate these vessels. How do we do that? By avoiding what's forbidden and using what is permissible in a proper way. That's called elevating the vessels. We talked about this before, but I'll just say it again. It's like going to the store and buying a puzzle. You love to put puzzles together. So you go to the store and there's a piece of a puzzle, 50,000 piece puzzle, right? 50,000 piece puzzle. Spend your time meaningfully. 50,000 pieces is a big picture of the sunset over Jerusalem. Beautiful. He goes home and he opens the bag. 50,000. This is going to be a real challenge. He opens up the thing, and there's like 50 million pieces there. He keeps looking at it. I thought it said 50,000. He looks at the instructions. It says only 50,000 of these pieces are used in the puzzle. All the rest are extraneous. Have a good day. So now you have to get rid of all the bad pieces. So once you do that, then you can start using the good pieces. Now you got a challenge. Now you have to put them together. Same thing with the world. Most of the world cannot be used. Can't be used. All the things that are forbidden in the Torah can't be used. All the possessions of other people, you can't take them, can't use them, right? Other people's wives, other people's children, other people's you can't do what you want to with your wife and your child, your money. And then when you do finally separate the not usable from the usable, then you have to put it together properly. That's like eating properly and making blessings on what you eat. It says when a person takes the physical world and refines it, then it's a very, very high thing. So it says the food as it is in the world is below man. You're eating bread, which is made from wheat, which is just a vegetable. and you're getting energy out of it. He says, why? Because the food really has a higher source of Ovashorsho. Lamaila hu lamaila. If Tohu comes from this world of Tohu, or we said the breaking of the vessels. It says before there was a king ruled for the Jewish people, higher. But afterwards, Vayimloch Vayomos, afterwards it came down low. These are all quotes from the Torah, talks about the children of Esav and etc. Okay, Vayomos Vayimloch says they died and they ruled. So this physical world, in its source, nevertheless, it fell down very low into the world. It fell down at the evil. But in its source, Nira, you can see, Sheshorsha Yoter Gavo, it's higher than man. How do we see that food is higher than man? That man needs the food in order to get life. So if so, food has something that man lacks. In some way, it's higher than man. A man receives life from the food. Why? Because man is the last of creation. The last thing of creation. And food, vegetables, they were created before him. That's talking about the rest of the week. But on Shabbat, Shuzman Aliyat Olamot and Shabbat, where all the worlds get elevated, Mit'ala Michael, the food also gets elevated. Kamoshahu B'Shorsho, as it is in its source. So you don't have to refine the food anymore. Then there comes life from the food, the nefesh to the soul, milamaylamata, from above to below. From above to below. So all the rest of the week we eat food in order to reveal the godliness which is inside of it, to reveal the energy which is inside of it, to reveal it, because it's concealed. Says the Rebbe, on Shabbat, you don't have the eating, the whole intention of eating is different. And on Shabbat, where the food directly gives us holiness, comes from its source. That's what it means, that a tzaddik eats in order to satisfy his soul. So to speak, in the weekday, we do the food a favor. And on Shabbat, the food does us a favor. In the weekdays, we reveal the godliness which is in the food. We elevate the food. We take away the bad. Like I gave you the example of the puzzle. You get rid of all these millions of bad pieces, and you take the good out of it. And on Shabbat, the good is already there. You just partake of it. The food does us a favor. It gives holiness into the world, the food. Holiness means the source of creation, the creator. That's what holiness means. You feel something from the creator in the creation. That thing becomes holy, the holy temple. The land of Israel is a holy land. The Jewish people are Am Kadosh, a holy people. Because ideally it's supposed to be that you see and feel the creator in them. That's the idea of tzaddik ochel l'sovea nafsho, that a holy person eats in order to satisfy his soul. The food does us a favor, so to speak. It gives us spirituality. There's two types of food. One is to satisfy your soul, and the other one is, it says, beten rishoim techsar, that the food just gives us life, physical life. It says that the stomach of the evil people is lacking. Now, according to Chassidut, an evil person is not a person that has a scar on his face and goes around murdering people, whatever. And a whole different definition of what is bad, evil. According to Chassidut, evil means that you're selfish. You learn the Torah, you do the commandments, but you're doing it all for yourself. But you're going to go to heaven, you'll get the rewards after you die, right? But you have to know that you were fooling yourself the whole time. You get everything, all the rewards, everything you want to, and you avoid going to get punished. But the main thing is that you really were not serving God. You were doing it for yourself. You did the right things, but your intentions were wrong. That's also called a rasha. That's also called a rasha. Selfishness. Of course, the one guy with the scar on his face that kills people is certainly a rasha. There's no doubt about it. But that is called a rasha, at least at the time when a person is doing it. So if a person in the weekdays, we have to refine selfishness. So that's what it means. We eat the food because we're selfish, and the food is selfish, and we're trying to reveal maybe something good within inside of ourselves. Meantime, we're trying to keep ourselves alive. The Sovea Nafsho, this is the life of the soul that comes from above. And that's the tzaddikim. The better Rishoyim, that the stomach of the evil people, namely the Rishoyim, that's what it means, all the external things, all the selfishness in the world. And by means of eating, we refine from them, we remove the bad and we reveal the good. And Shabbat, so to speak, there is no bad. It says the chil bola v'yati eu. It says that the swallows the good and the bad, and you vomit out the bad, so to speak, because in all types of food, there's always desire, and the desire, that's the source of klippa. So if you eat food only because you want fine cuisine, I mean, it's a very delicate thing. If it's a good thing to have your food tasty, you want to eat in order to keep alive. But if the main thing in the food is the taste, that's the main thing, then you miss the point. That's called a rasha. A rasha means selfish. There's nothing wrong with it. You're not going to get punished. But the fact is that you missed the point. You're missing the point. It's like, let's say, a soldier that fights for somebody, or somebody is hired, right, a political campaign, and really he's doing it only for himself. He could care less about who the campaign manager is. If the opposite side gives him money, he'll do that. A mercenary soldier, right? It doesn't care. He's doing it for himself. With who gives him the most money, he'll go over to the same thing in the weekdays. We're doing it for ourselves. We're doing the right thing. We're serving on the right side, but we figure that that's the biggest profit we're going to get. We're like mercenaries. So the Rebbe says, okay, if that's the best you can do, then that's it. And you're going to go to heaven. You were on the right side, but it's egotism. You missed the whole point of creation. The point of creation is not what you're going to receive of going to heaven. The point of creation is what you're going to give, make blessing, fix up the world, to make blessing, to bring blessing into the world. That's the idea of Shabbat. Shabbat is pure blessing coming down. There's no, so to speak, work that you have to refine, remove the bad from the good. It's just more and more good. Odir ter tov, like it says there. By means of shenichla b'gufa adam, nasa mimenu dam v'nishlach lalev v'moach v'shapach v'kedusha al yedei chizuk alev, like we said before. And by means of this, he takes the love, that's in the weekdays. He takes the life, saves the life from the bad side, and he's doing the food a favor. He takes out the good from the bad in the food, and that's what it means. The stomach of the evil people, of the selfish people, is lacking. That it's really lacking this life that he swallowed. In other words, if a person eats only for selfish reasons, then he's swallowed the good that he's done. So he has to fight a battle in the weekday, that the reason that he's eating only because God wants him to eat, to be strong, to be healthy. And therefore, it's a good thing that the food is tasty. Then he can eat better. He's more, etc. But you can always overeat, or you eat for the wrong reasons, or you look forward to eating right too many times. Yorishu el. The food in the weekday, this is biru that you have to do refining on. This is to be better in Rishon and Techzor. This is what's called the stomach of the evil people is lacking. It's lacking this holiness, and therefore it has to eat the food in order to get the holiness. But the food, eating food on Shabbat, there's no bad there. It's just drawing down good. Milamaila, the Sovea Nafsho, to satisfy your soul. Now that doesn't mean that on Shabbos you're, how do you say, protected, that you're, invincible. On Shabbos, for sure, everything is holy. It's not so. On Shabbos, you can also, how do you say, eat kosher, but your eating is not kosher. There's a story about the Baal Shem Tov, that the Baal Shem Tov once took his pupils for a walk on Shabbat, and he told them to look into a window. And they saw in a window, it says, they saw a tzaddik, and he was sitting with a big shtreimel, big one of these fur hats, and with his family, and he was eating meat. He was eating a steak, whatever, and they all looked and they couldn't. And all of a sudden, his face turned into a cow. His face actually turned into a cow, and they were startled. Looked and said that. So it became elongated, and his eyes were on the side, and they saw, and they were all just amazed. What's going on? And it's like a hideous thing to see. And the Baal Shem Tov explained the place where the person's desire is, that's where he is. Where a place where the person wants, the desire is, that's where he is. This person had so much desire to eat this steak. He was so into the steak that he transformed into a steak. Of course, he transformed into a cow. I mean, other people couldn't see it. The Baal Shem Tov, his family certainly didn't notice. Say, Daddy became a cow. And his mother said it happens every week. They got used to it. That's not what it was. The Baal Shem Tov enabled his pupils to see that because his desire was only for the cow, so it became a cow. And this was on Shabbat. So it doesn't mean that on Shabbat that you are inoculated, that you're not going to be able to be egotistical or anything like that. No. But it's just saying that on Shabbat, this door is open. And on the weekday, it's not. On the Shabbat, the food is holy. It's already holy. And the eating is supposed to be with a different intention. The eating on the weekday, which is refining. We said this, all this. Yes. Like it says in the Zohar. We did this. The eating on Shabbat, this is drawing down from above to below to satisfy your soul from the food, like it is in its source. Lamaila, above, Kodem Shenafel, before it fell down into selfishness and the breaking of the vessels. And the food as it is, She'en bo biror. It doesn't require to be refined. So the eating of Shabbat is holy. And again, the purpose of the Jewish people is to bring godliness into the world. So here we have two ways of doing it. One is to remove the bad and reveal the good. That's in the weekdays. And the Shabbat is just to draw more good into the world. The food that you eat becomes, you take the holiness of it and reveal it in the world. And that's what it says in the Zohar. It says it's a prophecy. I think that's in Isaiah. It says, the excrement of your holidays I will put on your faces. In other words, it says you're bringing sacrifices to the temple. You're only thinking about yourself. You're keeping the holidays only in order to just to eat and to drink, and you're not thinking about me. And therefore, it says the excrement of your holidays, I will smear on your faces. But it doesn't say the excrement of your Shabbos. What does it mean, the excrement? Excrement is the external. You eat food, right? No matter how beautiful and tasty and expensive the food is, it always comes out to be the same thing. It's not a nice topic to talk about, but it's the fact, right? The excrement. And this excrement is what's the bad part of the food. The good part of the food is what you use for your nourishment. But the bad part of the food it comes out to be waste, right? It comes out to be feces. So it says in there that God said, I'm going to spread the feces of the holidays on your faces. In other words, you're eating food on Shabbat just to satisfy yourself. So instead of getting rid of this bad, I'm going to smear it on your face. I'm going to show you what your real intention is. Your real intention is not the godliness which is in the food. It's the excrement which is in the food. That's what God says. I'll smear it on your face. This is a metaphorical way of speaking. Okay, but it says I'll smear the excrement of the holidays on your faces. It doesn't say the excrement of the Shabbat. And when a person eats on Shabbat, there's also the same thing, right? There's also excrement. It says not spiritually, though. The food on Shabbat is pure. What's the difference between Shabbat and the holidays? The holidays, is permissible to do certain types of work. On holidays, it's permissible, for instance, to slaughter animals if you want meat, and to prepare the meat, and to cook the meat, to light a fire. You're allowed to do those things on the holidays. So we see that on the holidays, there's a certain degree of refinement, like there is in the weekdays. But on Shabbat, all those things are forbidden. Why? Because the food on Shabbat is supposed to be pure. So it says, the excrement of your Shabbat, I will not spread on your faces, even if you eat for the wrong reasons. Why? That which is done from below to above by means of refining, like in the weekdays, most of whole, yesh bo pirish, there is excrement, which is the psolat, which is the waste, the muvchar sholech lalev, the good part of the food, the nourishment of the food gets sent to the liver and to the heart and to the brain, but the psolos, but the excrement, that goes below in the kirbayim, in the stomach, in the digestive system, right? In the digestive system, excretory system. That's the refinement. Shabbat and Shabbat, which that's from above to below, ein lo pasolet kol, it hasn't got any refinement whatsoever. As we're going to talk about this tomorrow, that's what comes from the true tree of the knowledge of good and bad. Good and bad. That's Adam. Remember, the whole thing of Adam was that he ate food. And because he ate the food improperly, so that's what brought us into all this trouble. That's the idea of eating. The eating on the weekdays removes the good from the bad, separates them. And the eating of Shabbat is supposed to be pure good. And we'll see what this got to do with the last letter of God's name, God willing, tomorrow. Let's just do this here.